All right. We'll get started in a little bit. Doing this one a little bit earlier than I normally do. So I gotta get some stuff done. First. So that's what's most important. You gotta be first. First or last. Ricky Bobby, my friend. Let's go. I don't know how many viewers will actually get in here, but that's fine. Because people can just review it after the fact, so I'm not really bothered by that. But hopefully everybody had a good weekend. I'm gonna record. I'm recording my whole screen right now. I'm not just recording TradingView. What's up, USMC, Shada? So I gotta be careful. I don't want to like put any of my info on the recording because I know my dumbass would do that. Because I want to walk through filling out my prep sheet here, wherever I put it. Oh, it's right here. Okay. Heading out to coach basketball soon. Oh yeah, you coach your son's teams or something, don't you? So if I drag this over, yeah, that should be fine. I think. All right, I'll start in like a minute. Yeah, okay, that works perfectly. Okay. Okay. Yes. All right, I get started now. All right, so let's walk through Bitcoin and see what else is worth charting, I guess. So I guess last week started off, make sure I have the chat up. Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah, man, I actually I thought it was next weekend. Anyways, so we started weekly open last week. So we built up 4 days of balance here. I tried to play a breakdown here, right? So we had April's low, which I guess is over here. We had April's low, so effectively I wanted to. So we actually front ran it at this point. But I mean, we put a lot of time and space in below this level, so I tried to play a short here. Patriots or Seahawks? See, that's what I mean. I don't even know who's playing in it, to be honest. We had an undersided retest, basically of Val and developing value on VWAP. Got like a triple bottom here, ended up closing that at break even. We shifted back inside. But my ultimate play I wanted to look for last week was the fill of the single print above value area high, failure, and then play the move down. I don't know why there's an alert here. I did short that, and it didn't really fill the single print. Like on Coinbase spot chart, it did sweep the highs. I don't think it did on anything else, but I did short this, and then it just chopped around my entry for too long, so I closed it. Unfortunately, that trade ran 26R to my target. Didn't get it, but did short, I think here, shorted here, and then shorted 2 more times here, so still a pretty decent week. Seattle, Man, the one thing I'm interested in seeing is how satanic or agenda pushing the halftime show is going to be. Curious to see. 'Cause I know it's going to be awful. It is every year, but it just gets worse and worse with the state of the world and the more stuff that comes out every week. People are starting to wake up, but going to be nasty. Yo, what's up, Saber? And then, yeah, we broke down from there. I actually annotated a lot of this in the channel, so that might be useful. So, what we did here, mostly just shifts against value and how you could have kind of capitalized on those shifts higher, failed shifts, that kind of thing. And then from there, we got into, this much older 8-month composite from 2024. Shifted inside there pretty quickly, and once we did, we completely traversed, kind of a big capitulation down at the Val. I was eating dinner, didn't even get in along here, unfortunately. Would have been really easy, and that was probably the easiest move of the week, to be honest. It was within a day, right? We saw basically a 18% move. So we saw, what do we see here? 15% move down in a day, and the following day was a 20% move up almost. So pretty crazy. And then now we've kind of been building out value on top of the 8-week there. So, the question remains, are we I mean, the levels are being respected nonetheless, so I wouldn't delete them off my chart, being the 8-month volume level, the 8-month time level, or sorry, the 8-month time value high still being respected, right? This to me is more a failure above value. Tried to shift back inside. We compressed here and then squeezed out. So that would be a bullish development if anything. But then again, we're also still building out value here over the course of 3 days. So I've marked that off, which again, I'm gonna fill out my whole prep sheet on stream so you can see. So the question is, being that we did shift back inside of monthly weekly value here, we've capped upside against weekly and monthly VWAP, so it doesn't actually have to go any higher, or else I would be definitely not leaning to even try and look at shorting here. Because we could just deviate the VWAPs once again, clean up these highs, tap golden pocket, and then revert lower. There is a big offer sitting up here, so if that wall remains there, then I think that's possible. And then from there, we would try and play lower. Nonetheless, we had this retest once we capped upside and failed here. We retested the 8-month POC, so that would have been a good long to take. So the question remains, are we going to fail upon a push higher above this composite, or are we just going to break down? So that's where I'm at. Now let's start to fill some of the prep out here. Drag that over. So I usually stick to start with the news anyways, which you can't see, but I really just go in Forex Factory, see what red folder news there is for the US dollar, and I just go from there. So 1 second. Forex Factory doesn't want to load. What's going on here? The website's not working for me. Well, that's cool. It says I have a bad gateway and I can't load the website. Maybe the website's down? I don't know. It says a host error. All right, so I guess we're not filling out the news today. So disregard that. I'll deal with that later, I guess. Whatever. All right, let's go to VWAP too. That's also worth noting. Okay. Go over to VWAP here. So yearly VWAP's been important. I've touched on it many times. So let's look at that. Canada Gateway is down. Site's down. Thanks, Mateo. I appreciate that, brother. I don't know what I'd do without you. Let's go to here. All right, yearly VWAP. So, we were, right, I just briefly touched on this, right? We found support right around the yearly open, even going, Christmas to New Year's, essentially. We were holding what is now previous year value. Shout out old Ryu trading. Yeah, let's go. Long live Ryu. We were holding 2025 value area low as support. This was kind of the impulsive move. We started to shift bullish. Being that we did, deem acceptance again, it was, there's good reactions around that level, but nonetheless, yearly and quarterly value aren't always actionable. Harder to trade off of. Sometimes they are levels to use, not always. We did attempt to mean revert at previous year VWAP. Obviously, we didn't make it there, and that's simply just weakness. So then we broke down from there. Once we lost that level, we cascaded down. Now, if we go and look at 2024 value, it held as support when we flushed down back in November. Once we shifted back inside, right, you'd be expecting mean reversion, which is what we got here at 2024 VWAP. And then from there, we kind of deviated and we capped downside against the composite low. So the question is, that's going to be a level going forward if we do continue to go up. But regardless, it's not really important right now, being that it's at 82K. So the question is this a deviation of VWAP? And are we going to shift bearish, like I said, against composite structure at some point? And, that's going to confirm that we traverse down. I think if we lose this composite low, then it's absolutely a confirmation that we're going to then not put so much emphasis on the fact that there's composite structure. We would put more emphasis on the fact that we accepted inside of 2024 value. And this wasn't a deviation. Well, it was, but it wasn't the bottom. We didn't just deviate VWAP. We are actually going to continue lower. And then in that instance, I would target somewhere around 50K. So that would be 2024 Val. Then you get into this older profiles value area high, this wick. So I mean, there's overlap here. I haven't even broken this down to try and trade from it, but nonetheless, this would be a downside target based off of yearly value. Quarterly, not much interesting there either. But I mean, now that we have started the second month, quarterly value is now different than monthly, so it's going to be a level going forward. Is this quarterly? Oh, I need to put that back on my chart, I think. 1 second. Quarterly, so quarterly val is there too. Okay, so my bad, that is worth noting. So again, if we do shift higher here and you saw acceptance inside of quarterly value, right, quarterly VWAP would remain at least the mean reversion target, and my higher upside targets kind of are, you know, confluential for that as well. So that's actually something worth noting. I forgot to put that back on. So just a quick tip there, monthly and quarterly value are the exact same until, at the beginning of the year, until the second month would start, and that applies to all VWAP. So if you have a yearly VWAP or you have a yearly open, all the way through daily up to yearly VWAP are the same until the period under starts its second period. I guess I kind of worded that weirdly, but nonetheless, and that's worth noting as well. Okay, so quarterly value is going to be worth looking at. If we do shift back inside, that would be confluential with my upside targets. That's what I'm trying to say. Monthly value. Monthly and weekly are the most important right now, being that we have shifted back inside of monthly value. So the question is, are we, we already kind of deviated a little bit, so are we going to deviate it once more, clean up those highs, and then shift lower? And then in that instance, this would be a good downside target as well, and potentially break down even lower from there. So worth noting with monthly. So we are rotational in monthly value, and we've capped upside. But we would bearish against all other VWAPs essentially right now. Same with weekly, shifted back inside. We have capped upside against weekly VWAP, so exactly the same, being that, weekly and monthly would be the same, but crypto is a 24-hour market, so there's like a 1-day difference between them right now. But nonetheless, going for a tug before I decide, yeah, very understandable. I get it. So we are rotational inside of weekly and monthly value, expecting traversal, but we have capped upside against VWAP. So let's fill that in quickly before I get too far ahead of myself here. Where did I put this? Okay. VWAP. So let's say shifted back inside of 2024 value. Mean reverted at VWAP. That's all. Yeah, that's nothing worth noting there. Okay, so let's just say imbalance down on quarterly value. A shift above local highs should prove acceptance. I've shifted back inside of monthly now. Last week, capping upside against monthly VWAP, and I'm just going to paste the exact same thing, being that they're basically the same. Hopefully that makes sense, and just change that. Okay. Go to rolling VWAP now, which is really just more of a trend and momentum indicator than anything. It's not necessarily a trade location. Rolling VWAP looks like we're starting to, it capped us upside last week. We may be starting to flip it here shorter term. Of course, it can just be a deviation of that as well, and we're underneath all of the other ones. So essentially bearish against the other ones, but they're not really applicable right now, so I wouldn't really care. Let's say capped price upside. Capped price upside at end of week. Currently testing. Just put under because we're underneath all of these. Not really applicable right now, and then we'll get into composite structure here. Okay, so essentially, how I like to fill my prep out anyways is I just put, so anything to do with a composite, I'll put under that. So I'll just put like we have an 8-month composite, it's going to be relevant. And then when I go to my bias and narrative, that's when I talk about the relevancy and how we can actually utilize these. So essentially we have an 8-month composite from 60.5K to, let's just say 70K. So 8-month CVA, 60.5K to 70K. Okay. That's what's going to be relevant right now. We have a 3-day here as well from 66 to 71.7. $66 to 71.7K. $66K to, yeah, okay. That is correct. I know this is kind of boring doing this, but I feel like I should do it on stream. Golden Pocket, quarterly val. Yeah, okay. And then from there, I mean, I guess I'll mark this 4-day as well. I think that'll be relevant going forward. So 4-day from 76.5 to 79, let's just say. To, what was it? 79? I always forget. 79K. Okay, perfect. Upside, I'm not going to mark anything else. Now let's just talk about anomalies, so naked point of control, that kind of thing. So I already marked this one at 76K, so it's going to be worth noting. Single print still remains here, didn't really get filled, so I'm going to note that as well. There's also a naked POC here. So let's just say 65K NPOC. 65 and 76K. Okay. Hopefully I did that right. 65 and 76. And this single print still remains at 79.3. I'm going to put that there as well. All right, so now let's form a bias and see where we're going into this week. All right, so we'll probably end up merging this. It'll probably be a 4-day at this point, this one. But for right now, I'm just not going to put it on there. So again, let's touch on what's actually happened. So we broke down, shifted, and we traversed all of 8 months of value. Really easy long. If you did get anywhere around 60, even upside, you could have just found a way to scale in, really. I didn't, but anyways, we traversed value. We did shift back inside of monthly, weekly value. We capped upside against 7-day rolling VWAP, monthly, weekly VWAP. We didn't sweep this high into this area here with Golden Pocket or anything like that. We kind of had a failure above, I would say, so we failed to shift higher at this point, so kind of a failed auction. Shifted back inside. Yeah, the like button is right there. That's correct. We sort of shifted back inside. We capped downside against the POC. And then we started to compress and kind of build out the point of control here. But we're basically compressing against the time value area high, which is this gray box here, this edge. Really between the 8-month time and 8-month volume, it doesn't really matter. We compressed and then we squeezed out from there. But I mean, at the same time, we're still building out value here. So the question is, if we get above really 72, and like I said, there's a big offer here. So if that wall of sells, essentially, if you want to look at that way, remains, I would expect we start to break down further. this POC, so mean reversion here, makes a lot of sense to play a short from around 72 to 69.5, give or take. And then, again, if we do shift back inside, I would say going forward, I'm going to put more emphasis on the time value area high. So one thing worth noting, I did actually mark this up for the practical examples kind of channel. I annotated all of this. There's usually a discrepancy between time and volume, the level. They're usually very similar, but on being that this is an 8-month profile, there's $1,000 difference. I mean, that's a lot to, at least for me, the way I execute, that's a big difference, right, going forward. So it's harder to work with. Usually, I mean, you can play it safer and wait for price to shift back inside of both of them if you wanted to short here, for example, which I mentioned last week. And then you want to go ahead and look at see which one's actually being more respected at the time. So going forward, I mean, they both are. But I mean, the safer play to try and go short, I think, would be here if I was to play continuation. And at that point, you kind of be breaking down from this point of control. So if we tag this POC, being that I would say this is rather naked, if we tag this and then start to break down, that would also confluence traversal, which is confluent with this. So long story short, if we continue up from here, I would start to lean on monthly val and weekly val, this holding here, right? I would expect we traverse value, which is confluent with the naked point control is 76K and the 4-day val. So I think it would be reasonable to try and be bearish from here, at least shorter term. I know the condition I get at that point would be bullish, so it wouldn't be a full risk short, but I think there's a lot of confluence here. I'd probably look to go short. And, if we did hold that as resistance, I would look to play, that would be confirming that we're still rotational monthly and weekly value. We'd probably deviate it a little bit because, this will develop down. So if we shift back inside, I would try and play a mean reversion of weekly and monthly value back towards monthly and weekly VWAP, wherever that decides to be at the time, somewhere around here, probably. So it'd be confluent with this composite high. So if we do break up from there, shorts maybe around 76K back to 72 would make sense. I think, of course, if we do shift back inside here, right, that would be a long as well. I'm not going to mark all that up just because that would be me anticipating moves. That would be more of a daily prep thing. So weekly prep, I'm just going over what's relevant right now. So failed shift above here, short down to here, and next target would remain POC. And if we do break down from there, I mean, there's more anomalies down here. So monthly val would make sense. Naked point of control here makes sense. Downside target, 60K. If we did break down, it would be 2024 VWAP value around 50K. Conversely, I don't think there's a long here. I think maybe there's a reaction to the POC here, but I don't think I want to bid there. I think if you were to long, you would have gotten anywhere around 60 or off this point of control, which I didn't. So I don't think there's a long here. Conversely, I don't think it's smart to try and play a long above here. It just doesn't make sense to me. There's too much resistance up here to try and play long. I think it would be a bit messy trying to bid here. And I would wait. Let's zoom out here. Quarterly value as well, like I mentioned. So 97, where's 93? Oh, at this point of control. Yeah. So I think long-term upside targets for me would be somewhere, I mean, the obvious ones would be 8-week POC. So essentially, if we do shift back inside of quarterly value, you've quarterly VWAP at 82, 2024 value area high, which is, VWAP, like I said. So if we do shift here and this is, some kind of a meaningful bottom going forward, deviating quarterly VWAP into the 8-week POC around 84 does make a lot of sense to me. And at that point, you're starting to break above 2024 value area high and the older 8-week val. So anybody have any questions on that? I know that's kind of a lot to go over. That was kind of all over the place, but I don't know what this guy's plugging in the chat right now. Okay, whatever. All right, let me pull my prep sheet up here and we'll recap that a bit more. Bias and narrative, so say price has shifted back inside. We'll start kind of top down. When I do these, I start with the most important thing first. So essentially like major shifts against profiles as well as VWAP here. So say price has shifted back inside of 8-month CVA. traversed value and found a meaningful bottom at AMC val at 60K. Let's say price shifted back inside of 2024 value and has deviated mean reversion. Let's say deviated VWAP. Deviated VWAP mean reversion. Yeah, that's all that needs to be put there. And then let's say price is building out value around the 8-month composite value area high over the weekend and has capped upside against weekly/monthly VWAP upon shifting back inside last week. Let's say a failed break above current 3-day CVA would, I'm going to word this, would be a bearish shift and confirm price is still rotational in current 3-day composite, current 3-day CVA, as well as remaining imbalance down against quarterly value. Time and space above CVA should prove accept into quarterly value. What are the volumized order blocks saying? Yeah, I gotta add a volumized order block section on my prep here. Should prove acceptance into Q value. Confluential, is that not a word? Confluent. I'm fucking stupid. I can't believe I just said that. Confluential. Confluent with more upside and POC at, where is it here? 76K? 76K is a good short-term target. Let's just say 4-day CVAL, weekly/monthly value area high, and POC. Okay. So that's to the upside. Actually, let's reword this. Let's say shift back inside of 8-month CVA confirms a failed auction, especially after shifting bearish on 3-day CVA first. So essentially what I'm saying here is I might change the wording on this, but I think that makes sense. Let's just reread this one more time. Say, price has shifted back inside of 8-month CVA, traverse value, and find a meaningful bottom at 60K. Price shifted back inside of 2024 value and has deviated VWAP from mean reversion, so essentially it doesn't have to traverse any lower. Of course, that's my downside target given we just puke lower, which I guess I will put down at the bottom here as well. Price is building up value around the 8-month CVA over the weekend, is capped upside against week monthly VWAP upon shifting back inside last week. A failed break above 3-day CVA would be a bearish shifting from a price is still at least rotational in the current 3-day CVA, as well as remaining imbalance down on quarterly value. So that would be a bearish rejection, but not a shift in the condition. A shift back inside of 8-month CVA confirms a failed auction, especially after expecting traversal to 8-month CVAL, because that's what you should expect. Time and space above 3-day CVA should prove acceptance to quarterly value. Confluent with more upside. Naked point of control at 76K is a good level. Blah, 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 blah. If price does break down from 8-month CVA, I would lean more on 2024 value, meaning for Val is next target at 50K. I think that makes sense. Anybody have any questions on that? So essentially, if we fail above here again, that would be a short down to the POC here. You know, if that POC gets taken and we do shift back inside of the 8-month, then you would start to lean on the traversal of the 8-month. And I think the value area low and the POC down here is a good target. So, I mean, we could remain, and monthly and weekly value are there as well. So that means we would be rotational in the lower half of VWAP, basically. We would have shifted bearish against the current 3-day and the 8-month. So we'd have shifted back inside bearish. So, of course, we could deviate Val here. So composite Val and monthly weekly Val. Tag the NPOC that I have down here, which isn't an amazing level, but it's worth noting, and then shift back inside, and then we're fully rotational. Or if we break through those, then I would say 60K is basically guaranteed. Of course, this reaction, I forgot to note that as well. That's important with noting this capping downside. Capping to the downside against the POC, that is worth noting as well. You know, from there, if we do break above here, I don't think I'm going to long this. I don't expect this to give much of a reaction, both to the upside, rather. Of course, it could, but I don't think it will. I think the longs, ideally, you don't want to position yourself here. I mean, this is such obvious resistance, right? Even though it means that'd probably be confirming that we traverse value, monthly, weekly value, and, we're going to target the next area of prior value, shifting back inside of quarterly, right? To try and position for that move, like, even though you're applying the rules in auction market theory and all that kind of stuff, it's still a stupid place to try and long. It just doesn't make sense. So if you were to try and long, if anything, it'd even be at the POC here, or it would have been here or lower. Like, it's not smart to try and long this. So I don't think I'll bid long there. Conversely, I'm not gonna. This is just anticipatory, I guess. So I'm not even gonna put this. This would be more of a daily thing if we break upside. I think if we tag this NPOC and then fail to shift higher and shift back inside a monthly, weekly value, that would be a short too. And then that would be confirming that we're still rotational inside of VWAP. And then you would play a mean reversion back towards VWAP, which would be confluent with this resistance level, composite high, whatever. When did this happen? Friday? I'll put that in there as well. The POC. Price is building out value. Price has also capped downside at 8-month POC, potentially being an inflection to see price push, say, shift higher. All right, so let's talk about some long hypos here. We'll just mock that up quickly. So let's say, oh shit, what did I even say for longs? I mean, really, I wouldn't be surprised if this produces reaction. I don't think I'm going to bid this level, though. Sweep with the POC. No. I don't know. There really isn't much. I don't want to long anything right now, to be honest. I think the easy longs were here. Or here. This, I would long if we shift higher here, I would say. So I guess that's worth noting. So if we do shift back inside of the 4-day CVA, that I would take. But besides that, I don't think there's any longs I would take right now. It just doesn't make sense to me. That was the long. I don't think this will get swept. There's good excess on this candle. It kind of tagged this doji or order block or whatever, so I don't expect like these to get swept and then retag that candle. If this, like let's say these wicks just remained here and didn't tag this order block, I would say that a sweep would be more likely. And maybe we could bid that, but I don't think it's the case, to be honest. So longs right now. Failed shift higher. Sorry, shift higher back inside of here. So say return pullback into 4-day CVA. Besides that, I don't really have anything to say. Failed shift higher above 3-day composite high. And let's just say return pullback into 8-month CVA. Long-term bullish line in the sand. You know, I would say, I guess it depends on what I determined that to be. Long-term bullish line in the sand. I mean, I would say the 8-month point of control. Or no, let's just say 70, yeah. Long-term bullish line in the sand. Let's just say 8-month POC for now. 8-month POC, short-term. I mean, let's say 8-month CVAL. Long-term, short-term. Bearish short-term line in the sand, I would say, is the 4-day CVAL. I mean, even then, I could probably short those single prints, but I don't think so at that point. So essentially, if we get above here, if we see this shift, I don't think I want to be shorting anymore. Short-term bearish line in the sand would be the 3-day composite high that we're above right now, or price is currently at. Really isn't much to long. I wish could have positioned better on the longs, but I don't think there is anything. If we have any questions, I know this was kind of a dragged out prep. I feel kind of stupid this morning if I can't explain what I want to. But essentially, yeah, I think a failed shift higher, right, we'd be remaining imbalanced down against quarterly value. We really just deviated weekly and monthly VWAP. So if we shift back inside here, that would be a short towards the POC. You know, if that gets taken, of course, I would probably, like, this wouldn't be my main target, even though it'd still be a decent short. I would target at least the POC. Honestly, I'd probably target the lows, especially if we do confirm another shift back in here. That would be another short, and I would do the same thing. So shorts there, shorts there. I think this naked point of control would be a short as well, I guess. So say NPOC at 76K. I'll put that in there too. Say NPOC at 76K. So of course, if that 76K NPOC doesn't play, you know, I would expect we shift higher here, so then you could go long. Anybody have any questions on that? Yeah, I do feel kind of stupid right now. I can't explain what I want to. Short everything. I mean, not even like... This is a bullish development on VWAP. I mean, this is bullish, but rotational in this. We've kind of broke out of the 8-month, but it's over the weekend, and we're just building out value, and it's really just looking like a failure. Unless we get above here, which, you know, I mean, there's sell walls up here. There's a pretty good offer here. So, I mean, if those remain intact, then I assume we're going to do this. If they don't and they get pulled, then I think it's incredibly likely we go here. So, but I think being bullish isn't bad. I just think that the better longs have already happened. So I mean, I think I was sleeping during this even, I don't know, but this would have been a decent bid to take off the POC. It had a good reaction, imbalance, not a ton of conflict. I mean, besides the POC, but it made a lot of sense to try and take this. I think that was it. I think this was it. I mean, wouldn't have taken any of this, I don't think. Even here, maybe if you were to really try and get aggressive, I think this is a breakout. That would have been the long to take. Really tight stops, probably above the 8 month. Because I mean, as many times as you can see reactions off of these levels, the 8 month levels I'm talking about, they're still being respected, even though we're building out value here. Like they're still being respected, so there's no point to then go, okay, I'm not going to use them anymore. That's because I mean, there's a time when you need to cut off the levels. Like if price starts to just chop on them to shit, then they're usually no good anymore. And I mean, this is an old level too, but obviously they're still good. So even though we're building out value here, like they're still being respected. So there's no reason to then remove them. But the most recent attempted shift, I guess, would be this, which would be a bullish breakout. But of course, we're still rotational. We haven't taken the highs. We haven't swept them. You know, we haven't tested this pocket yet. So it just, that's the question. So I think being bullish isn't bad. I just think that the longs, you know, they already happened. Is what I think. Of course, you could try and position yourself if you wanted, but I'm not going to until I see something better develop. So, you know, quarterly VWAP's a good upside target, I think. If you look on a larger time frame here, I mean, a lot of imbalance to fill out, especially above here. 80K, so that's where those single prints are above the 4-day high. So I think that's also not a bad area to at least be paying attention to. So massively imbalanced down. So, you know, if we do see that shift, I don't, I mean, just going long off that alone isn't enough for me. It's just, which I assume once I drop or we drop the course and all that kind of stuff, I assume this is going to be an issue for people, and it actually was for me at one point too. And it's even harder, or it's a bigger issue when you try and do it with an even larger profile, which it happened to me. When it happened to me, it made sense to take it, but it's more likely to fail. It's much easier to play. Like I'm just going to touch on this right now because that's why I don't want to long up here, even if we do breakout. You know, if you have like an 8-month profile, for example, or we built out 3 months before we dumped down here, that was what we were inside of. If you're inside of a 3-month profile and you start to shift bullish, right, and you try and bid long above something that's just so significant as resistance and try and see if there's acceptance above and try and bid, which makes sense, is so much more likely this fails and just reverts back into value, which is exactly what happened. I did go long here, or I did go long on that instance above the 3-month, like a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, because it did what I wanted it to, but it's just so much more likely it fails. So like if you were to try and position yourself here, and again, there's so many more profiles inside of here. So if you were trying to position yourself, you would have positioned yourself so much lower to then, you know, leave runners in case we do break out. Not to say you can't do it, but it's so much more likely. So of course, like your two best setups to take with profiles are these. So an immediate breakout like this or an immediate return like this. And of course, to the downside is the exact same positioning. But when it's such obvious resistance to try and do it, like it's so obvious this is resistance. You have highs here, quarterly value, golden pocket, like big offer here, like I said, to try and just go long here because it does this just does not make sense. Like I said, you want to position it goes back to buy low, sell high, right? Of course, if you have the right momentum. So if you have this, let's just say I'm going to draw this one more time, which I assume, like I said, I'm only touching on this because I think it's going to be an issue in the future. Because this is one caveat to where like you can apply all of the rules perfectly and all the laws that I follow and whatever, but this is where it will you'll find failure with it essentially. And it's because you're just buying into obvious resistance. So once you look at the bigger picture, you go, oh, this is so stupid. Like, but let's say you have, you know, let's say price is doing this inside of a 3-day, right? Or let's say this is a 3-month profile. Again, I'm just going to use Bitcoin. And then let's say you have, you know, a 5-day profile here, a 6-day here. Again, this is horrible drawing, but you'll get the point, right? You fail to shift lower on a 3-month profile and you accept back inside. The 3-month is more important than these little ones, right? You're not going to be bearish against all of these little profiles, being that you failed to shift lower in a 3-month. So, you know, you apply the rules, you expect a 3-month traversal now, right? Or at least the point of control. So with that being said, then you'd be, you know, you try and be bullish down here. That would be your ideal swing long, I guess. And you'd be expecting shifts to continue inside of the smaller ones, being that the 3-month you're expecting traversal, right? So then you can be bullish against the smaller ones. And that's where you would ideally position yourself. You wouldn't position yourself up here. Of course you could, but that's, you know, you might just remain rotational in the 3-month and then this happens. So just want to give a little educational tip there. In fact, I'll show exactly what happened with Bitcoin because it did exactly that. My chart's kind of messy, but let's just say this, for example, right? And you can confirm shifts on a with shorter references, right? So you may be shifting bullish in a 3-month profile, but you confirm that because you shift bullish on shorter profiles first, being that it happens first and it's easier to confirm. So again, this is all stuff I teach, and you'll see how powerful it is. But nonetheless, like there's an example of it failing too. So we're building out value here, right? Fails to shift slower. 17-day profile, you break out here. Bullish shift, that's a long, right? Uh, you know, for example, if you position long up here, you have equal highs up here. You have this area that's untapped up here, right? This node. So if you were trying to play a breakout long here, see how easily it failed? And then what? It just reverts back into value. Then from there, it ends up capping downside of whatever this was. You're rotational here. You get a breakout, right? And then at that point, this is extremely bullish, right? This impulse. So when something is, truly proven acceptance and shifted into one direction, it doesn't like to give you pullbacks. Like when something's trending, it doesn't give you pullbacks because then the FOMO kicks in, right? And people can't position on the move. So we had like whatever, I think it's a 5-day profile. Again, I need to fix these because they're older now, but and then again, I also don't know like these levels. I don't know where this composite was at, like if this was a 5-day when this shift happened, if you make sense when I'm trying to explain this, but like positioning up here, right, which I actually did because it gave the reaction I wanted to, and the condition was bullish. Of course, I knew this could fail because we have the 3-month profile here, right? So we get a breakout here, we go long, which I did. It failed up here, right? It failed at this single print. Obvious. I know it's resistance, right? I know, but it's proven acceptance. Then it becomes range bound, right? So it's likely to fail. I've touched on this before. But positioning up here is not the move. You want to position here, 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 here upon a breakout of a smaller profile, being that it failed and you expect traversal. Now, if it fails here and shifts back inside, which it did, the 3-month profile is here. There's people bidding around here on the weekend, builds out a really small balance, and then they all get flushed and you get this aggressive move. So being that you've shifted back inside of the 3-month value, you failed once here, you traversed this way. Now you're going to traverse this way, which it did here off the POC, and then it actually shifted lower. Now it's rotational, so you expect it to go to the other side. So essentially, up until it reaches at least the point of control after failing here, you should be expecting it's going to probably slice through all of the smaller bearish profiles. So the bigger picture is going to take priority, and you would be looking for shifts bearish to continue the move down until it meets the more significant profiles areas where you expect it to be resistance or support. So point of control or the other side of value, right? So again, the exact same thing happened here. So you're again, I don't know when these levels even been formed, but obviously shifted bearish here. You know, again, it broke down here, it came back up, retested, bearish again, and then it tagged the POC. So that obviously can interrupt the traversal. I went long here. Then it becomes rotational again. It attempts to go bullish and shift higher, and it caps upside against this high volume node, which essentially is almost the same as this point of control. So you can, treat these the same. So you can treat this as the POC interrupting the move. Then it failed there, shifted bearish. That's another bearish shift because it capped upside against the high volume node. Tried to break down, right? And it failed. So you shift back inside of the 3-month. Okay. Then it traverses value again. Then it, shifts bullish on this one. And then the same thing happens. It fails again at that high volume node or point of control. So, it traversed twice. Or sorry, it mean reverted here, failed to shift bullish because it capped upside against the high volume node or point of control. Then it went to Val. Then it failed and shifted bullish, and it was bullish. Again, I'm scribbling everywhere, but it shifted back inside of here. So bullish shift. So you're expecting traversal or at least mean reversion, which you can treat this node as a mean reversion because it's almost the same as this, right? Then it shifted bullish here, back inside of this 5-day. So that would have been a long for you. Then it capped upside at the high volume node, which is 5-day value area high and this 5-day value area low, right? So that interrupted the move. Then it shifts bearish, and then it dies. So you can see how this profile really told you everything you needed to know, and you just confirm the moves with the smaller ones, and those are how you position usually. I know it's kind of all over the place, and I just scribble everywhere and shit, but I promise my videos aren't like this. They're way more structured. Like I don't just scribble everywhere like an idiot, but just wanted to touch on that. Anybody want me to chart anything else while I'm here? What are we doing here? So I assume we punch these highs here. I think it's incredibly unlikely. So I know that was kind of rambling and shit, but um, I'll structure that properly in a video, I assume. Probably in the future. I'll probably have to do it. I added a supplementary video section in the course. So it's basically like all the educational stuff touches on everything, and then supplementary stuff. So I did like, as it sits right now, I've done 2 videos. I did, I explained why to trade this way, essentially. And it's not just auction market theory. The thing is with auction market theory is that, I mean, you can look it up. I'm sure there's probably hundreds or thousands of videos on YouTube talking about auction market theory, right? And they're all great and they explain the concept of it, but it's not even, I don't want to sound like it's just me, but it's the system that I have built around it. Like I have an answer for literally everything for what happens. So if you ever like go on the chart and you look at it and you're just unsure, you have no idea like what to do. You like, and I'm not bashing other trading styles or saying mine's better or anything like that, but the issue is that whether you trade ICT or support and resistance or even use profiles in some regard, but 90% of people that trade, they literally open the chart and they're like, okay, like I use profiles, fibs, and liquidity. So let me look on the chart where there's profile, fibs, and liquidity and they overlap, and that's where I'm trading. And they wait 9 days for their area to get hit, and like the condition is just so against them at that point, the idea is just completely invalid. So my system is based off of recency, value, traversals of value, like ranking that information, seeing like where there's confluence and distance, like all that kind of stuff. So I have a video explaining why you should trade this way. And again, that's what I'm saying. You can understand auction market theory, but the fact is most people literally have no system around it. So it's not like if I make a video on AMT, right, and I explain what it is, which I have, but I also explain my system behind it. You can look up any video you want on AMT, but they're not going to give you a system. They're just going to tell you, they're going to show you a profile and be like this. They're going to say this is fair value. Price is gonna do this and this and this, and POC is the point of control. That's all they're going to tell you, right? So you need a system around it, or it's not effectively useless, but there's not much you can do with it. So I did a video explaining why that is important and why to trade this way, or why I think you should trade this way. And then I also did a video on how to predict a price with VWAPs. So just something to know for anybody who cares. I just wanted to touch on that. That should be out really soon. At the end of the month, it should be out. I could probably even do it sooner if I have time. But we'll see. So, and again, I have a lot more videos I plan to release in there whenever I see fit. So, gold and NASDAQ. I actually looked at NAS here. Hold up. I had something on it. I forget what it was. I think it's opponent control. I think it's right here. Yeah, that's what it is. So shifted there. So I guess that wouldn't have been a horrible short if you were to look shorter term. I would expect, I mean, there's a lot of confluence here. I think longer term, if you were to short, it'd be this point of control. So quarterly value area high, previous week val, monthly VWAP. There's so much overlap here. This massive imbalance, single print, kind of run these highs. I would expect that is a really good reaction, being that you kind of have accepted here. As long as you don't cap upside here, I would expect that this area also is going to hold if it gives a retest. Similarly to Bitcoin, though, I guess it just depends. Like if Bitcoin starts to push higher and go towards those upside targets I mentioned, then I assume this will go up here. If Bitcoin does break down, I expect this to come back down too. And then from there, I'd probably just look at some anomalies here. So, I mean, that point of control would probably be a good downside target to short, or at least try and play a shorter term long. It really just depends. If you're intraday trading or you're trying to catch bigger moves, I just chart NASDAQ on a more broader basis, I guess. Course finna change our lives on God and Doctor's life. Doctor has the course right now. I don't even know if he's finished it, but I actually seriously though, like for anybody who cares, I put so much stuff in there like that I didn't even intend on doing. Like initially, like this has nothing to do with the weekly prep, but honestly, I don't really care because we're just sitting here yapping and nothing's official or launched yet. So I just kind of spitball in these, but when I initially made it, I didn't like the server has done really well, I think so far. I didn't realize how many people would want to learn this concept and how I trade. Like there's been such a demand for it. So initially I was gonna put a fair bit of stuff and charge a little bit less than I plan to, or we plan to, I should say. But then I realized how much of a demand there is and how much interest there is for how I trade, I guess, and how all this stuff works. So I added so much more stuff. Like really, like if I made the course 2 grand, nobody would question it. Of course, you can take my word, but you don't have to take my word for it. But there is a like plethora of information and system in there. Like I put a ton of stuff in there. So, anyways, that's what I would do with NAS, and that should be at least the end of the month, maybe sooner. It just depends when we get finished. Gold's been pretty good. I've been pretty good with gold charts lately. It's much more tradable now, actually, than it has been. I shorted gold here last week. I also called the bottom here too. Where was it? I called this bottom too. So let's talk about shifts here. Maybe I'll trade it more this week because it actually gave a few decent setups last week. But nonetheless, right, we found a failure above here, whatever it was. Definitely weakness. Reverted back inside of this previous day profile. It was kind of shitty, but cleaned up these lows. Tagged Val, another failure above. Shift back inside. You could have shorted that. Traversal. And then, like, where did I short? Yeah, okay, I did short. So then from there, it was pretty much untradeable. It just built out value here. It chopped up this level. So at that point, pretty much unusable. But, you know, you also saw acceptance back inside of monthly and weekly value. So you're expecting traversal, although it did mean revert. So with that being said, you just kind of wait for one more shift to confirm your bias. So kind of sort of shifted bearish there against this profile, but still nothing really usable. This was a bearish shift back inside of this profile. I actually shorted this. We traversed monthly, weekly value. We tagged what I would deem to be a really strong naked point of control. And the exact same time that happened, Bitcoin bottomed at 60K and it just fully reversed my short. So I closed it, shifted bullish against that profile. And in that instance, we've remained rotational inside of this VWAP. And it looks like we're kind of compressing against that level now. But with that being said, like I said, with positioning, there's absolutely no reason to try and get bullish here. You're at the rotational extreme of weekly, monthly value, right? You are at this composite high. You have, this kind of imbalance and this untapped area here. There's just no reason to try and be bullish here. It just is not a favorable trade for you, like by any means. So not somewhere I would ever position. So, the question is, does price squeeze above here, tag this kind of area, like get above this wick, tag this, and then revert back inside. And again, it remains rotational and it's also, failed to shift higher in this composite. In that instance, then you'd be looking to short. If you were to try and position long here, let me just see what we've built out since then. I'd actually probably form this into composite now, I think. Let me just see what kind of overlap we have. So these are mergeable, being that there's 50% value overlap or more, right? So this would be a 2-day profile. You wouldn't merge this one. So here's one thing you'll know, and I cover this with composites. So essentially, if you have this profile and this profile, right, you can see there's really not much. I mean, I guess there is a bit of overlap, but it's kind of messy. You may have a profile like this, and then you may have something like this on the following day, and you're like, I don't want to merge that. And then you have another day here, right? So you have profile, not really any overlap, and then really nice overlap. You would merge all three to make a 3-day composite. So you can see that's what we have here, which actually it's 4 days. So that's 2 days. This one, I wouldn't love to merge with this one. You merge right to left, by the way, with the composite. You merge this one into this one, and then this one into this one, and then now you have a 4-day. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So now you can see how much better of a picture you're dealing with here. So simply put, you want to position at the extremes, being that it's rotational, right? So you'd position, if we fail here in short, or at the very worst, you would position here for a long, like very worst. Even if you had no bias or any narrative read, you just want to position around the extremes at the very worst. So you can see how much better of a picture you get with that profile now, being that you have a 4-day composite here instead of, multiple days. So I'm heavy on composites. I don't care about daily profiles very much. So that's my style. So drag that. A lot of VWAP overlap here too. So I mean, a short back down to 78.40 would be favorable, I would say. But 4-day. And then what I like to do as well is put a volume profile over it like that. So then you can see, the difference between volume and time levels. There was a guy in breakout chat earlier telling me that AMT and value and time profiles are useless. Pretty funny. Meanwhile, the the guy has bull and bear indicators on his chart, but I'm not going to bash people. I'm not going to bash people. So we could even fail right here. Again, it's going to be a bit harder to position this off weekly open. We don't know how gold's going to open, so I'd mark that off. But rotational here, quarterly VWAP, quarterly Val. Let's just look at VWAP here real quick. I don't really care if this drags on, to be honest. How is it 10 in the morning, man? I feel like it's 4 in the afternoon. So let's just see where we're at. ICT doesn't approve volume profile. Man, I saw it was, I think his name's Casper SMC. He's like an ICT SMT trader or whatever. He sells he sells courses and like a whole bunch of things. That's like his whole thing. And I think he was a drug dealer too. Like he's a convicted like coke dealer, went to prison and stuff. I saw him post a video like volume profiles, like where the big players are doing business or like some buzzword bullshit. And it was literally like it was not like it was a completely like total wrong interpretation of how it even works. Like quarterly value anyway, so we traversed rotational quarterly, not really useful right now, but quarterly VWAP might be important being that's overlapping. Rotational, yeah. So we're at obvious resistance right now with the position. Anyways, he basically went like this with the profile. Like it was like where price reversed. It was like something like this. It was like, and he put a tool right here. Like he just like went like this. And he's like, POCs where the big players move or something. It's complete opposite. Like he literally just put his position tool on the point of control while the market was doing this and it went up and the POC was here. Like that effectively is useless. Like it's a developing profile. Like it's literally useless. You may as well have just press buy anywhere. I think I called him out for it actually. I think he blocked me. I don't know. But yeah, for gold, sorry, I keep going off topic here because I'm just enjoying shit talking right now. Which I normally don't do. Normally these are more professional, but whatever. Oh, that's my VWAP. Go back here. Nonetheless, I mean, this would be a good area here, I think. I'd expect a reaction here around this point of control off this little range we built. You also have this imbalance and these kind of lows. I would say if we break out here, I wouldn't long. I just can't see buying above here. I think I would wait for a failure, and if we shift back inside, I'd short the hell out of that down to here. Right, you have so much here. There's your mean reversion for VWAP. It is the other side of this 4-day composite. Quarterly VWAP, previous month VWAP is there. There's so much overlap around 48.20 or so, right? I would short to here, and if continued to break down, right, that would be good. Conversely, I probably wouldn't, like I said, positioning in bad spots, I probably wouldn't try and short here as well because, you have these lows here, you big imbalance. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. If anything, this would be the better short. And even then, it's a prior day, single day profile. It's already been traded through partially. I don't care about that as much. I think your best trade is going to be this. So I may even pay attention to that because, it's a pretty good composite and there's a lot of reason for why I would think that we would fail up here. So really a failure anywhere in here, revert back into value, I'd short it. Upside, it's a bit harder to trade. When the market is imbalanced like this, I guess you have an NPOC here that would be an upside target, but again, not much to work with because it's a trending profile, so don't have great value there. This one, none of these are great. So when the market is imbalanced, like if you're trending, then that's when I would put more emphasis on using VWAP over volume or TPO, just because it's not much to work with. So these profiles, not much to use. I mean, this one's been traded through, and these are all just single day profiles. There's not much to them. This is super shitty to try and use. This one's been traded through, and again, it's just a single day. This is a trending day, same with this one. So at that instance, I mean, there wouldn't be much for me. Uh, maybe this POC would be a target. Again, this would be a lower risk because it'd be against the condition being that we broke out of value. But I mean, something like this would probably make sense. So if we pull a profile here, you have a golden pocket. So, again, very obvious resistance. Previous month VWAP, it means you will fully traverse quarterly value, previous month value high. So if we, found resistance at this naked point of control, ran these highs, that would be a short probably. But again, you're not working with value really at that point. So nothing wrong with that, but that would be, a probable short. But to be honest, I'd be getting bearish here, bullish somewhere lower. Maybe getting bearish here, but honestly, I can't see even trying to buy in any of this. Like, just look at the structure. Like, how are you going to buy in here? Imbalance, highs, there's just no reason to try and buy here. So, not to say there wouldn't be anything that sets up shorter term, because there could, and of course, we could build up more value, right? So, I mean, if you build out value here, rotational, and you get an immediate break, you could long that short term for sure. But to work with any of this to try and bid up here makes absolutely no sense to me. So, I used to trade more that style, just trading reversals and whatnot, but trading this way gives you such an easy framework for doing things in such precision. There's just no reason for me to even try. Something like this would make sense though, like a regular reversal to short here. There's a lot of confluence here, right? So that's something I would look at, but just to disregard value altogether and just try and play reversals like this, which I knew was going to provide a reaction, but nonetheless, it's just not what I do anymore. This is like I don't want to say a no stress way of trading, but you're never like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. There's never an instance like that. So yeah, I'll have to draw this up and I'll post it and whatnot, but kind of a messy prep, but it is what it is. PB, 4-day CVA, failed shift. Yeah, not my most favorite prep I've ever done, but all right. Anybody have any other questions? I know this was like a super long and drawn out video, but whatever. It's a Sunday and I'm tired, so if not, I'll wrap it up and we'll wait for weekly open, but I'll just give it a minute here. You're welcome, my friend. But yeah, I think near term a failure above here would be very bearish. But again, here, let me touch on this one more time. That you wouldn't short here. You probably wouldn't. And if you were, and again, this comes with experience and stuff, but if you were to short, you would not get short down here. Like, it's just, if you took away a profile, right, this older 8-month, like, look what you're shorting off of. Like, this is the most obvious support. It's so significant. Why would you try and play this? Like, it's just so stupid. You position where you can on the move down. You don't, you're positioning into a destination, essentially. So one way you could play these, which again, this is my favorite way of trading like big profiles is, and again, this conversely could happen for longs too. So if you built out value here on a shorter term, right? The implications of a 3-day, or sorry, a 8-month profile, you're expecting traversal. If you become rotational here and you see a break like this, there's your traversal completed of the 8-month and a failed shift lower of a smaller one. So you execute on the shorter term, on the larger term idea with a smaller profile. So you could do that. That's one way I love to position in these kind of moves, which I kind of did last week. Or you could do this as well. So, you could build out value here like this, right? For maybe a day or two, whatever it happens to be, right? You could get this, you could get a failed break. That's your retest, and it's a failed shift higher in a smaller profile, and it's an undersided retest of the 8-month. And then in that instance, you wouldn't be trying to play a traversal of the smaller profile, being that you just broke down from 8 months of value. You're trying to play it down to the next major inflection, which for me is the 2024 value, which is 50K. So just a cool way to play things here. Conversely, it could just be a failed auction. You actually, could shift higher. And then, in that instance, that's and that's an A plus shift. That's the most recent shift to happen, and a failure lower. That's exactly the same as going like this. So in that instance, you're expecting here again. So, all right, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Might get some other stuff done today. I may actually hop in Discord and go over some more stuff. I don't know. See what I get done. But I'm gonna wrap it up. Have a good rest of your Sunday, everybody. If you're watching football, I was gonna say good luck, but like that doesn't make any fucking sense.